want to thank you all for coming. What a year! And I want to thank you, Mr. President, for coming to share this picture-perfect fall day with all of us in New Hampshire. As you are well aware, Mr. President, we not only market our first-in-the-nation primary, but we also shamelessly promote our awesome fall foliage. A double gift to you this year, Mr. President. But this is also an exceptional year for all of us standing at the podium, because it is a beginning to appear that less than 2 years after the Gingrich Revolution, the most conservative Republican state in the nation is about to do a U-turn politically. Now, you're going to ask why this happened. Because, Mr. President, you were right in 1992. It was the economy, stupid. And look what you've accomplished. Today, unemployment is down, corporate profits are up, deficit is cut in half, interest rates are low, and finally, the U.S. has joined the rest of the industrialized world and has adopted the Family and Medical Leave Act. Yes! And frankly, Mr. President, as a mom and a wife, I thank you. But Mr. President, I must confess, it's not only you. In fact, in 1996, the New Hampshire Democratic Party has the strongest and finest team of candidates in decades. In fact, Al Gore dubbed us the Dream Team. You see, Mr. Vice President Al Gore knows that Dick Swett is going to send Bob Smith packing. Yes! Joe Keefe and Arnie Arneson, myself, are going to Congress to replace that infamous speaker named Newt, and Jeannie Shaheen is going to restore civility and sanity to Concord. Yes. Well, on the other side of the aisle, the poor New Hampshire Republican Party can only offer up what one fellow on public radio referred to as the Dream On team. But 1996 is not only the year we break new political ground, this is the year we tear down barriers, because New Hampshire is one of only 2 states in the country that have never elected a woman governor or sent a woman to Washington. This election year, we could get, heck, we will get a twofer. The first woman governor and the first woman congressperson. And trust me, it will give Jeannie Shaheen and me great pleasure to make that number 1. But before I introduce Joe Keefe, our past party chair and candidate for the 1st Congressional District, I just want to share a short story former Governor Ann Richards used to tell. She tells this story of a guy sitting at a bar talking to a bartender, and he asks the bartender, "So, which is worse, ignorance or apathy?" The bartender looks at him, rolls his eyes back, and says, "I don't know and I don't care." Well, not this year, Mr. President. This year, we all know and we all care, and that's why we're gonna win. All right, yes. And now, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Joseph F. Keefe, New Hampshire's own JFK, and the next congressman from the 1st Congressional District.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And Mr. President, welcome to my hometown, Manchester, New Hampshire. Mr. President, we know that New Hampshire has a special place in your heart, and I hope you know by the size of this crowd that New Hampshire has a special affection for you. In 1992, 4 years ago, the state of New Hampshire made Bill Clinton the comeback kid. 4 years later, today, in 1996, President William Jefferson Clinton has made New Hampshire the comeback state. Mr. President, your economic plan has turned our economy around. When you visited this state 4 years ago, we led the country in bankruptcies. We led the country in foreclosures. We led the country in the rate of increase of food stamp applications. And today, 4 years later, look where we are. Our unemployment rate in New Hampshire has been cut in half, thanks to the policies of the Clinton-Gore administration. 40,000 New Hampshire families have had their taxes cut. Those people who really needed a tax cut, those working families making $28,000 a year and below, thanks to President Clinton and his willingness to stand up to Newt Gingrich and Bob Dole when they tried to take that away. $56,000 new jobs have been created in New Hampshire. Under the previous administration, we lost 41,000 jobs. What a turnaround that is. And last week, because this president fought tooth and nail to give a minimum wage increase to those people who work hard 40 days a week for the most meager of wages, last week, 40,000 New Hampshire citizens got a 50 cents an hour raise thanks to this president. And it's not just in New Hampshire, folks. All across America, unemployment is low. Inflation is low. Interest rates are low. Crime is falling. The dropout rate is falling. College enrollment is up. All the things that should be down are down, and the things that should be up are up. For 12 long years, under 2 previous administrations, we heard a lot about cutting the deficit and cutting taxes and cutting the size of the federal government. But this president has cut the deficit in half. This president has cut taxes for working families. And this president has cut the size of the federal government so that today the size of the federal bureaucracy is at its smallest since John F. Kennedy took the oath of office in 1960. The other side talks about these things. This president has accomplished them. For 12 years, we heard Republican presidents talking about balance the budget. This is the first president who has ever submitted a balanced budget to Congress. There's the difference. Now Bob Dole and my opponent, John Sununu, want to go backwards. Do you believe that we should abolish the Department of Education? Do you believe that we should give an across-the-board tax cut that puts the country $550 billion further into debt? This isn't a partisan issue. The Concord Coalition, the bipartisan Concord Coalition, said last week that in order to fund the Dole-Sununu tax cut, you would have to cut education by 40%. and Medicare by 40%, and environmental protection by 40%, and law enforcement, and our national parks, the FBI. Do you think we should cut those programs by 40% so the most privileged members of the society can get a tax cut? Well, that's what this election is about, ladies and gentlemen. That's what this election is about. And that's why when this president says he is building a bridge to the future for all Americans, he is telling the truth. We can't afford to abolish the Department of Education. We can't afford to cut Medicare in order to finance a tax cut for the wealthiest Americans. We can't afford to roll back environmental protections. We can't afford to fight against those who simply need a decent living wage to get ahead. We can't afford to go backward. But under President Clinton, the next 4 years are going to be even better than the last. And 4 years from today, New Hampshire's economy and New Hampshire's families, New Hampshire's children, and New Hampshire's future will be brighter because we have a president who cares about New Hampshire, and we care about this president 4 more years. And we also have a tremendous opportunity because 4 weeks from tomorrow, we can retire from Washington after 12 sorry years. Bob Smith. And this is one of those double whammies that Arnie Arneson spoke about, because not only can we retire Bob Smith, but we can elevate to the United States Senate the best congressman that New Hampshire has ever had. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you the next senator from New Hampshire, Dick Swett.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back on a playing field I played on when I was in high school football, right here at Gill Stadium. But more importantly, it's an honor for me to be here with this fantastic rally of all of you wonderful people, with these outstanding candidates and our next president, our current president, Mr. Bill Clinton. You know, Mr. President, you did a fabulous job last night. And you make us proud to have you as our leader. Thank you for coming to New Hampshire. Not just this year, but every year that you've been in the White House. You have been a great president of this great nation. You have not forgotten New Hampshire, and New Hampshire won't forget you until the last dog dies. This election represents a clear choice for America and for New Hampshire. As you have said, Mr. President, Republicans like Bob Dole want to build a bridge to the past. As Democrats, we want to build bridges to the future. And that's a future that's good for workers and for families. My campaign for the U.S. Senate is based on 3 simple, basic values. We must reward work, we must honor families, and we must make government work better for us, the people. Rewarding work means doing basic common sense things like raising the minimum wage. Last week, 12,000 New Hampshire workers got a raise thanks to Mr. President. Bob Smith voted against that pay raise. He voted against extending unemployment insurance. He's voted against working Americans. Is Bob Smith your senator? We need to honor families. When I served in Congress, I voted for family and medical leave, only to have it vetoed by the then President George Bush. It took Bill Clinton, the president who is committed to America's families, to make it the law of the land. And if we're going to honor families, we can't cut $270 billion out of Medicare like Bob Smith and the Gingrich Congress. We cannot have that shifted over as tax breaks for the wealthy. The folks on this stage are not going to let Medicare wither on the vine. Our Senator Bob Smith voted against medical and family leave. He voted in favor of $270 billion cut to Medicare and shifting that as tax breaks to the wealthy. Is Bob Smith your senator? No. Finally, people want government to work for them and not the other way around. That's why I was proud to have co-authored the Congressional Accountability Act, the law that makes Congress obey the laws it passes for the rest of us. Mr. President, it was a great honor for me to be there with you when you signed this into law in 1995. And because I believe that the government should work for the people, I didn't take the congressional pay raise, and Mr. Smith did. I returned it to you folks here in New Hampshire. When Bob Smith said that he wouldn't take the pay raise and then voted for it that midnight vote and took that $23,000, was he your senator? No. Well, my friends, it's time to pass the torch. It's time to pass the torch to a new generation of fresh, independent leadership. Our candidate for governor, Jeanne Shaheen, represents just that kind of leadership. She has been a leader in the state of New Hampshire for New Hampshire's families. She took on the big insurance companies to pass good health care reform. She's been a pioneer in the fight for lower electric rates. That's good for working families, and that's good for keeping Granite State businesses here at home where we need those good jobs. Just as they've always done, Republicans have already trotted out what the president last night called the golden oldies liberal label. But we know that Jeanne Shaheen has pledged to veto any taxes, sales, or income that come across her desk. Jeanne Shaheen is a wife, a mother, a state senator, a former teacher, and a small business owner. She knows who she's representing in the State House. And come November 5th, she's going to add one more job to that list. Will you join me in welcoming the next governor of the great state of New Hampshire, Senator Jeanne Shaheen?
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, New Hampshire! Welcome, Mr. President, to our great Granite State. That's right, we love you, Bill. We love you. We are so proud to have you here. And let me tell you that after last night's debate, we are so proud of you, too.
a great job, Mr. President. You offered the people of New Hampshire and the people of every state a vision for America's future. You talked about issues that are important to our families. You talked about health care, about education, about good jobs with benefits. You offered hope and opportunity and new possibilities. Once again, you showed us how we can work together to move America forward. And you know, Mr. President, what every parent knows, and what every teacher knows, and what every business person knows, that education is the key to a prosperous future. That education is the key to good jobs with good benefits and the key to a living wage. And Mr. President, I want to say thank you for Goals 2000 money. You know, there were some people in this state who did everything they could to block that $9 million from coming into New Hampshire to relieve property taxes to help fund our schools. Well, let me tell you this. When I'm governor, we're going to apply for that money as a state, and we're going to send that money back to local communities to relieve property taxes. So I'm proud to stand here to introduce you to the people of my state today. You know the challenges that New Hampshire faces. You understand the hard work ahead. You know, as I do, what makes New Hampshire special and what needs to be changed. As New Hampshire's next governor, I'm eager to work with you to meet those challenges and to move New Hampshire forward. And I am honored, especially honored, to be here this afternoon to introduce to the people of New Hampshire our great President, Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, 5 years ago today, on October the 7th, 1991, I came to New Hampshire. I am told that I am the only sitting president since your own Franklin Pierce to actually come to New Hampshire every single year of my presidency. And I can tell you that on this gorgeous fall day, looking out at all of you and seeing so many of you who've been my friends now through good times and bad, there may be someone in America right now
who's happier than I am, but I have no idea who it would be. I am glad to be here. Thank you, and God bless you all. It's great to be back in Manchester. I want to thank the mayor and all those who came out to the airport to greet me. I want to thank the 2 football teams who changed their schedule so we could all be here, the Central High JV and the Concord High JV. Let's give them a hand. All right. There they are back here and back there. Thanks. I want to thank the bands, the Central High School and the Spalding High School marching bands over here. Give them a hand. They did a great job. I want to tell you how very proud I am to be up here with these fine candidates. I was listening to Arnie Arneson speak, and I thought she could double the energy in the House of Representatives all by herself. We need that kind of vigor in this country. And I heard Joe Keefe, and I remembered how I implored him in the dark days to stay on as the chairman of the Democratic Party in New Hampshire, and he said he would, and what a difference a year and a half makes. Thank you, Joe Keefe, for fighting for New Hampshire, for America, and for the future of this country. I looked at Dick Swett, and I thought of the times when we talked in quiet places without big crowds about this country and its future. I remembered when he was for a law to require Congress to live under the same laws it imposes on the rest of us before it was popular, before anybody knew anything about it. And it's the law of the land today, and I campaigned on it in 1992 in the state of New Hampshire because of the work that Dick Swett did. And he can do better work if you'll send him to the United States Senate, where we can move forward and stop the negative forces and build the positive forces of America. And I was thinking of the first time I ever met Jean Shaheen, and what a terrific governor she would be for any state, and especially for New Hampshire. Jean, I thank you, and I thank you, Dick, for what you said about the debate last night. I enjoyed that debate, and I thank Senator Dole for joining me, and I believe that the American people got a pretty good feel for the differences between us, the differences in our views, and we just proved you can still do it and be civilized and decent and humane, and that's the way we ought to conduct our public affairs in this country. Four years ago, when I came here, the issue was how we could get our economy going again, how we could pierce the rising tide of cynicism in our electorate, how we could pull this country back together again. Today, the issue is, what path will we take to the 21st century? Are we on the right path, or should we turn back to another path? If you look at where we are now compared to where we were 4 years ago, just think back to then and what it was like in New Hampshire, a time of high unemployment, bankruptcies, rising frustration and anger. I said then, and I repeat to you today, I want this country to go into the 21st century with the American dream alive for every single child in America, with our American community coming together instead of coming apart. Think how many places in the world today are crippled and face destruction because people who come from different religions or races or ethnic groups simply cannot get along. In America, we can all get along if we share the same values and we honor our system and we show up for work. And I was determined to see this country continue to lead the world for peace and freedom. But 4 years ago, you took me on faith. You don't have to do that anymore. Now there's a record. 10.5 million jobs, record numbers of new businesses, record exports of American products, 4.5 million new homeowners, 10 million homeowners who refinanced their homes at lower interest rates, 4 years of declining crime rates, child support up 50%, welfare rolls down 2 million, out of wedlock births dropping for the first time in 20 years. This country is on the right track to the 21st century. Four years ago, we doubted whether ordinary Americans would ever benefit even from an improving economy. But now we know we can turn that around. Since the passage of our economic plan, the average income for families, the typical family in America, has gone up more than $1,600 after inflation. Last year, we had the biggest drop in poverty in 27 years, the lowest poverty rate among senior citizens ever recorded, and all people, all working people, were finally beginning to benefit from our endeavors. We had the biggest drop in inequality of working people's incomes in 27 years. We are on the right track to the 21st century. And so I say to you, I hope that you, in 1 month and 1 day, and all the American people like you all over this country, will make a decision to stay on that track, to plow new ground, to think new thoughts, to come up with new ideas, to leave behind the old debates, the old policies, and the things that got us in so much trouble because they were long out of date. Just think how far we have come and where we can go. We have cut the deficit by 60%. It's gone down in all 4 years for the first time since the Second World War. Truth is, it's gone down in 4 years for the first time since before the Civil War, but we had a surplus in some of those other years. But now we have to finish the job. People tell me in Washington, now don't go anywhere and talk about balancing the budget because it bores people now and it requires tough decisions. But it's important. Why? Because these declining deficits have meant as the government borrows less money, it's easier for you to borrow money. That's why interest rates are lower for home mortgages, credit card rates, car payments, student loan payments, and business loans. That's why they're lower, because we're bringing the deficit down. So I say to you, now we have to finish the job of balancing the budget in a way that enables us to continue to invest in education and research and protect the environment and the health care of our seniors and our families in need. Will you help me build that bridge to the 21st century? We cut taxes for 15 million working families and made every small business in America eligible for a substantial tax cut when they invest more in their business. Now we have to cut taxes to help families raise their children and educate them, to pay for buying a home, not to pay taxes when you sell a home, to deal with a medical emergency. Will you help me build that bridge to the 21st century? We passed the Family and Medical Leave Act. We just passed a bill to stop what I call drive-by deliveries, letting insurance companies force mothers and their newborn babies out of the hospital within a day. That's over now. We ended that. We finally gave some recognition to the needs of mental health and health insurance policies. And finally, after a long, long time, we made the children of Vietnam veterans who were exposed to Agent Orange, who contracted spina bifida as a result, finally we made those families eligible for health care and disability payments that we should have done long ago. We're moving in the right direction. Now, we ought to expand family leave to say you can take a little time off from work without losing your job, to take your parents or your children to regular doctor's appointments, or to go to that conference with a teacher at your child's school. We ought to give our families the opportunity, if they earn overtime at work, to decide whether to spend that overtime, to get that overtime in more money or more time if their children or their sick parents need it. We ought to do that as well. We made 25 million Americans more likely to keep their health insurance with the Kennedy-Kassebaum bill by saying no one can take your insurance away from you now just because you changed jobs or because someone in your family has been sick. Now we need to finish the job and cover people when they're between jobs. That is also in my balanced budget plan. Will you help me build that bridge for families to the 21st century? We passed the toughest crime bill in history and are bringing the crime rate down 4 years in a row. We need now to take on the tough problem of juvenile gangs, and we need to finish the job until we get all those 100,000 police out there, like the ones I saw here in Manchester, helping you to recover your neighborhoods. Will you help me build that bridge to the 21st century? We work with states all over this country to move nearly 2 million people from welfare to work. And then I signed a historic welfare reform bill that says we will continue to provide to poor families health care and nutrition. And when the parent goes to work, there'll be more for child care than ever before. But now every state and community in the country has to take what used to be the welfare check, and if the adult, the parent, is able-bodied, that welfare check has to become a paycheck within 2 years. Will you help me create the jobs to put people to work and end the cycle of dependency in America and build that bridge to the 21st century? We've worked hard to improve our environment, to take chemicals out of the air, to make our drinking water safe, to improve the standards of health for our food. We've cleaned up more toxic waste dumps in 3 years than the previous administrations did in 12. We protected their attempt. We fought their attempts, and we beat back their attempts to cut environmental protection, toxic waste cleanups by a third, to take over some of the national parks and let them be privatized. We protected our national parks, but we have to continue to enhance America's environment and to clean up the worst toxic waste dumps in this country so our children are growing up next to parks, not poison. Will you help me build that bridge to the 21st century? And above all, will you help me make education our #1 priority so that all of our people can create, compete, and win? My fellow Americans, the young people in this audience, within just a few years, let's hear it for them. The young people in this audience, many of you will be doing jobs that have not even been created yet. Many of you, in fact, will be doing work that has not been imagined yet. We are pushing back the frontiers of knowledge, creating new activities, and coming together across national boundaries all across the world as never before. In just 4 years, medical research has more than doubled the life expectancy of people with HIV infections. In just 4 years. Within a few years, every time a young mother comes home from the hospital, the mother and father will be able to get a genetic map which tells you what your child's health care profile will be like for a lifetime. People will know how to raise their children, what kind of exercise they most need, what kind of diet they most need, what kind of medical care they most need. We will extend life and make it more abundant because of what we are doing in research, but we have to have people educated to do it. We are doing a joint project now, research with IBM, to build in a matter of a couple of years a supercomputer that will do more calculations in 1 second than you can do on your handheld calculator in 30,000 years. We have got to invest in education and make America the education capital of the entire world. Will you help me build that bridge to the 21st century? Will you help me mobilize an army of volunteer literacy tutors, AmeriCorps volunteers, and others so that we can make sure by the year 2000 every single 8-year-old in America can read independently? Will you help me prove that we were right and those who oppose us were wrong, that the Goals 2000 program allows local schools to set their own grassroots reforms to achieve excellence? It's not a national standard of uniformity on the schools of New Hampshire. It's an empowerment tool to challenge every state to set national standards and international standards of excellence and cut the schools loose to achieve them. Will you help me do that? Will you help us hook up every classroom in America to the information superhighway so that all of our students, no matter whether they're poor, rich, or middle class, can have access to the same learning at the same level of quality in the same time for the very first time in the entire history of the United States of America? Will you help me do that? And finally, will you help me open the doors of college education to every single person in America of any age who needs to go? Will you help me pass a tax credit so that people can deduct dollar for dollar the cost of tuition at the typical community college or vocational training school so that everybody can get 2 years of education after high school? Will you help me? Will you help me pass that deduction of up to $10,000 a year for the cost of any college tuition so that every family can afford to go? My fellow Americans, it feels a lot different in New Hampshire than it did 4 years ago. But the faces are the same, the spirit is the same. You embody the character and hope and promise of America. I can never thank you all for what you have done for me and for Hillary, for our family, our campaign, and our administration. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here tonight, and you know it. New Hampshire, you gave me the chance to serve you for 4 years. You know now that what you took on faith has been justified by the record. The American people saw last night the stark choices before us. Our best days are still ahead. Will you help me build a bridge to the 21st century? Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.